Hello and welcome to the JK Feather Ranch channel. Today I'm going to show you how to replace the regular battery in your truck or SUV with a deep cycle marine battery. Why would you want to do this, you ask? Some people might have light bars and loud power-hungry stereos. In our case, we just bought this refrigerator, which is awesome. You don't have to make a day trip around getting ice for your ice chest anymore. But as soon as I plugged it in about 3 or 4 hours, this happened.
It's filming, by the way.
Okay. So, as I was trying to figure out how to make this last more than a few hours, I got to looking at the area available to me under the hood, and this is a fairly small battery if you look at how much area is available. And I was thinking, I have this Group 29 deep cycle battery in my garage already for a trolling motor. I actually already brought it in the house and tested it with that fridge. It ran it for 48 hours and it was still at 12.4 volts, which is more than enough to start the engine. So I was wondering if it would actually manage to fit under the hood. Let's find out. And it does fit in the space provided, but we have a bit of a problem. If you look at the terminals, this is the plus over here. It used to be over here. This is the minus over here. It used to be over here. These aren't going to reach. And if I flip it around, we'll have the negative connected to the positive and the positive connected to the negative. And I really don't want to light my car on fire, so we're not going to do that. Now, your battery may drop right in if you have enough room for it. The particular battery this XTerra takes is called a 24F. I don't know what the F means, but I'm guessing it means flipped, because the terminals are on the opposite side from what a normal battery would be. And I cannot find a deep cycle battery, at least not one they sell at Walmart for $86, that has the terminals in the correct location. Now, on some vehicles, especially those that only have one cable coming off of the battery, you could actually just extend the cables to reach the new terminal locations, and I could actually do that with this negative if I wanted to. The problem is going to be this positive terminal over here has 3 wires coming off of it and this big fuse block that would be a pain to do anything with if I even could. So I'm actually going to relocate the battery terminals instead to put them over here. And how I'm going to do that is with this big, I believe it's 1 inch by 1/4 bar of brass. I'm just going to put it over this terminal here and have it extend out to here, where I will attach this to the top of it. Now, I've already marked it on another take of this shot that I decided not to use. So what's going to happen is I'm going to drill a hole here to put it over this post. I'm going to drill a hole here and run this bolt through it and attach all of this to this. So let's go over to the picnic table / workbench and get started on this. Now, if you're doing this from scratch, you'd probably be starting with a bar of brass about 1 foot or so long. I've actually already done this, so this piece I'm using is pretty much the perfect length. Otherwise, you would have to cut it, which is why I've got this saw out that I didn't actually end up needing. The next thing I want to do is just sort of round off the end a little bit. I don't have anything that can make a perfectly round end. I am just going to cut off the corners to make it a little less sharp on both sides. Now, since I'm too cheap to afford a vise, I have gone with the tried and true method of a bar clamp attaching a piece of metal to a picnic table. So I'm just going to cut along those lines with an angle grinder. Before we do, anything that involves potentially shards of metal getting near the vision organs, let's remember to engage our safety squints. So now that I have rounded off the edges and made them less sharp, I am ready to drill my holes where this will attach to the battery and to the terminal. What I need to do is space them out a little bit from the end, so I'm just going to use this 3/8 inch washer, and because I need a contact patch of bare metal. So for the holes, I'm just going to mark a spot in the middle of the washer on each side, and that's where I'm going to drill my holes. I want a 5/16 inch hole on one side where it's going to contact the battery, and a 3/8 inch hole on the other side where it's going to contact the terminal. So I will go ahead and drill those with a drill press. That was the 5/16. Now I'm going to switch it over to a 3/8 inch bit. Now on my 5/16 inch hole, there is a little bit of a lip on the pad of the battery where the post comes out, so I am going to drill just the bottom of that out to 3/8, so it'll go over it. I'm just going to drill it about halfway through the piece of metal. Just like that. You've got this lip here with a larger hole in the bottom and a smaller hole on the top. Now I will drill out the 3/8 inch hole on the other side. So now that I have drilled my holes, it did leave a little bit of a burr around the edges, so I'm just going to grind that off. That also ensures that there's some nice shiny metal around each of the holes for the terminals to contact. Thank God I got the right size bolts. So now that I've drilled my holes, I could just attach it to the battery just like this, but I'd like to give it some sort of protection so it doesn't short out against anything, since this is going to be constantly carrying battery current on it. So I'm actually going to paint the whole thing with Flex Seal. Before I do that though, I need a little contact patch of bare metal around each of these holes. The way I'm going to accomplish that is just by putting a bolt and nut through each hole. Now on the one that I drilled in 5/16, I'm going to use a 5/16 washer on the top. I am going to use a 3/8 washer on the bottom, just because that is where it contacts the battery. So I'm going to put the bolt and nut around that. It would help if I have a socket on the wrench and I have it turning the right way. So this way the Flex Seal will not go where the nuts, bolts, and washers are. For the other side, I'm going to use a 3/8 bolt and a 3/8 washer on both sides. But before I tighten that down, there's one other step I'd like to do. So before I put the nut on this side, I am going to just wrap a piece of wire around the bolt. This serves no other purpose except to give me something to hang it up on when I go spray the Flex Seal on it. So let's get that good and tight. And let's take it over to the paint booth. So here we are at my state-of-the-art OSHA-compliant paint station. I'm just going to hang it from this branch here so I have access to both sides and spray it with a coat of Flex Seal. There we go. And now, through the magic of video editing, we wait 24 hours for it to dry. It has now been 2 days since I painted the Flex Seal, and what I'm doing now is just cutting around the washer. When I go to pull that off, I do want it to be a clean separation, because that's going to be my contact point where the battery and the terminals contact the bars. So I'm just gonna go around and make that a nice clean cut with an X-Acto knife. And now that that is good and separated, the next thing I need to do is just remove these bolts. I will be right back because I don't have my socket wrench. Now that I have the proper tools, the next step is going to be just to remove these nuts and bolts. It is going to be a little tight to get a wrench on them just because of the Flex Seal, but you should just be able to thread them off. It also might be a little tight to get it started, and you're going to want to be careful that you don't gouge the metal, but it will come off. There's one. We'll go ahead and remove that. You can just throw these nuts and bolts away because they're going to be covered in Flex Seal, and we can just pull that off, and you're left with bare exposed metal on both sides, which is exactly what you want to contact the battery. Let's just take care of the other one real quick. This is a different size, so I am going to need a different size socket. This one doesn't want to come off, but there it goes. And there is what we have. Nice exposed contact pads on both sides. I'll be right back. I just dropped a washer into the abyss. Now that I have finished making my terminal extender bars, the only thing left to do is attach them to the battery. Here's the one I made for the positive terminal. It's got the bare pads on both sides. Here is another one I made off camera to extend the negative terminal. The only difference is that this one, which is going to be the bottom over here, goes all the way to the end of the metal. That's just so I can attach the negative terminal to it easier. Other than that, I followed the exact same process. And I did buy a new battery. The one that I had already is still going to be used for my boat. And this one does have a better handle design. Instead of the one that loops up here, these both fold down flat and take up a lot less room under the hood. I did have to buy a new I had to make a new hold down bar. The hold down bar that came with this was too short and it was all corroded from the battery fumes. So I bought new J-hooks that are taller, and I made this bar. I just took a bar of stainless steel, painted it with truck bed liner, and drilled some holes in it. Since it is stainless, it should not corrode again. So in order to extend these posts over, the first thing we need to do is remove these old terminals that aren't going to be used anymore. I'm just going to unbolt everything from them. Now, if you're doing this on an XTerra like mine, you won't have this additional wire. That's something I added later for an inverter, but you will have these two connectors. So what I'm going to do to make everything fit is I will take my battery terminal that I made and come up from the bottom with a 3/8 by 1 1/4 inch stainless steel bolt. Stainless because we're dealing with battery fumes and acid so it doesn't corrode. I'll put that through the bottom, attach a lock washer, and then hold it in place with a 3/8 inch nut. We will make sure that is good and tight, because on top of that I'm going to attach the battery cables. let's just get that good and tight. And now that we're good with that, we can go ahead and attach it to our 5/16" battery post, making sure the side that we drilled to 3/8 is on the bottom, because that is going to make sure we don't get any, make sure there's no gap between the bar and the battery. So let's tighten that down so it's not going to move while we hook everything else up to it. And now that that's good and tight, we will put these back on in the same order they were on the XTerra. Then we'll attach my inverter cable, and we will use another lock washer and 3/8" nut to keep everything in place. As soon as we tighten that down, we're done. That's not going anywhere, and we accomplished the same thing as if the battery post was over here. And the last thing we have to do is hook up the negative connection. Now, you could just extend the wire. I didn't have the necessary parts to do that right now, but I did have enough metal to make another one of my extender bars, so that's what I went ahead and did. For this one, again, I made a little lip where it goes over the battery terminal. That's on the bottom, along with the part that extends all the way to the edge. So, first thing we're going to do is put a 5/16" bolt through it, and through this, attach it with a nut and lock washer. And then that is just an extension of our negative battery terminal that we're going to come over here and attach onto our battery. And I already heard some things in the car come back to life, so I guess that means I did do this correctly. Get that good and tight so it doesn't go anywhere. And the last thing that I'm going to do, this is kind of optional for you, but I don't have my scissors. Turns out I did have my scissors, but as my wife will tell you, I am completely unobservant. The last thing I'm going to do, the battery came with this little terminal protector. Obviously it doesn't fit anymore because I put the bar on there, but I'm just going to cut it right about here and stick it over the positive post just to prevent it from shorting out against anything under the hood. If you need to jump start it, you can still just pull it off, or you can attach jumper cables to here or anywhere else. So that's it. I have put a big deep cycle battery where it doesn't belong. Let's just make sure everything works.